It's a dark night. Dark night. It's a dark night.
What she wants is unknown, but she always comes back. The specter of darkness. The woman in black.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's movie review of The Woman in Black, starring Daniel Radcliffe. I'll be honest here, I'm not a fan of Daniel Radcliffe or any of his work. It's weird, right? A 25-year-old male who doesn't like Harry Potter. I must be crazy, or an adult or something. Regardless, to say the least, none of his work has ever caught my attention, and due to Harry Potter, nothing he did outside of that series would catch my interest either, until other reviewers and friends of mine spoke highly of a horror project he was doing. Enter The Woman in Black, an R-rated horror film that seemed to stand out above all the films at the start of the year. It also looked promising with everything I saw about it, and the high praise it received from fellow reviewers such as the Stone Horror Critic. With that in mind, I decided to go see the movie with an open mind, and I have to say that I was pleasantly proven wrong. The Woman in Black was not only a great film, but quite possibly one of the best horror films to be released in quite some time. The film tells the story of a turn-of-the-century lawyer as played by Radcliffe, who must venture to an odd town plagued by a vengeful spirit. The spirit seems to be drawn to Radcliffe, and his presence causes a mass amount of chaos and hysteria among the townspeople. It's a pretty straightforward story, but it's not the story that makes this film so great, as opposed to its massive atmosphere that actually becomes a character in and of itself, but I'll get to that later. Performance-wise, Radcliffe carries the film well, being solid throughout the whole entire thing. From reactions to interaction, he remained in top shape, and it's interesting to see him in something outside of what made him famous in the first place. While there is a supporting cast in this film, they are sparingly used, and we are mainly with Radcliffe's character for the majority of the film. When we do get scenes with the supporting cast members, they are all handled well and with subtle care, even if it's brief. Pacing is also done very well, as the movie knows just how long to wait in between scares, and when it is best to execute them, creating a great sense of suspense. You know something is going to happen, but you don't know when, and this creates a constant sense of dread rarely seen in horror movies today. Using such a technique is truly the sign of a director who understands horror and fear. But the one entity that really steals the show in this film isn't the director or Radcliffe, but instead the atmosphere of the movie, which is through the roof, and is the main thing generating the frights for this movie. The movie is brilliantly shot with well-placed angles and well-thought-out shots. Trick cinematography is also often used to obscure things in order to make them look creepier visually or in our heads. Sometimes creepy images are distorted by shooting from different angles or making scenes slightly out of focus. This is done to fuel the idea that what we think is infinitely more frightening than anything the creators could have thought up of, but done better. When film uses this concept, they simply tell you about the monsters that go bump in the night, but never really show you them, and while this works well, it is rather annoying and tends to be a bit of a letdown for many, like with the Blair Witch Project. In this film, they showed you the entity but obscured it a bit, forcing you to think. You still get creepy visuals, but your mind is left to fill in the gaps, and this is horrifyingly brilliant. The lighting, sound, set designs are all excellent and very disturbing. The set designs have a very antique and aged gothic feel to them. From the film's small town to the moors of the haunted house, all the locations simply scream classic haunting. The sound work often reminds me of that found in films like Insidious, where it too generates fear, and often with just sounds alone, and the use of low-key lighting and shadows allow your mind to put monsters in shadows whether or not they are actually really there. The dark tones also work excellent with scenes of dread, adding more intensity, and pacing is always steady, never taking you for a fast ride or slowing down. It's always at a nice steady constant. The film's ending also manages to close off the film well with a bittersweet send-off, but still manages to make it subjective enough for each viewer, which is all the better. When you are still debating over a movie's ending or true meaning long after you've seen it, you know you've seen a well-crafted film. If you want to get a good scare and see how a smart horror film is made, I highly suggest checking this one out. The Woman in Black gets a 9 out of 10.